Welcome back to Julie's Village. I'm glad you're here. As a reminder, if you would like more information or to be added to my waiting list for receiving consulting or coaching-like services for applying specific strategies to your individual situation, please feel free to reach out to me at juliesvillage@gmail.com. Julie's does not have an apostrophe. I'm going to continue with our next category under which a student can qualify for special education services under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. I will be taking my information from the Idaho Special Education Manual, and the specific criteria can vary slightly from state to state, but for the most part, it's pretty consistent. This category is orthopedic impairment, and there are multiple ways that a person can qualify under this category. Impairment can come from a congenital anomaly, such as being born without a limb or with club foot. It can come from a disease like poliomyelitis or bone tuberculosis. Or it can come from a different reason, for instance, cerebral palsy or an amputation or a severe burns or fractures that cause long-term or permanent damage. Under this category, a student would need some kind of documentation from a medical professional. Sometimes this seems a little strange because you can see what is going on for a student, but having documentation just helps to make it clear to everybody what is happening and why it is happening. So that, for instance, if a student had an amputation, that is great information to know because we can know if a student is learning how to walk. Perhaps they had a foot or a leg amputation and they're relearning how to walk versus a student who was born without a limb that perhaps from their early development they started to learn how to walk without that limb. This information can be helpful for a team. It can also be helpful for if there's any reason that information needs to be shared with somebody who won't have eyes on the child specifically. For instance, if you ever moved schools and or even districts and your student's file was sent before they met you, that would help the team to better know what your child's needs are and to be better prepared for those needs. So those are a couple of reasons why that documentation is important and why it is required to be there. So if there is a known impairment, the next step is that the team will conduct an assessment to see what is the impact of these physical needs on a student's school day. Not only how is it impacting their educational performance, but also how is it impacting their access to the school environment. Based off of that information, the team would then discuss, well, is there an adverse impact? Or are they so familiar with their own needs that they are pretty much able to perform as any of their other peers in the classroom, and they're able to be successful with little or no additional support. If that's the case, then nothing more is needed for that student. If the team does see that there are needs for accommodations, but only accommodations to help a student to be able to access their learning environment, then a 504 would be appropriate for the student, just doing a 504 plan. If the team can see that there is need for specially designed instruction, then at that point, a student would qualify for special education services. This specially designed instruction might include academic support. It might include academic instruction if a student is missing information. This can happen if a child was, as they were going through those developmental years, if they were delayed in some of those developmental milestones, that can have an impact on those academic skills. It might just be that they need help in accessing their academic materials, and that access piece is an important part of the learning piece. Are they able to find ways to manipulate a book to be able to read the information? Are they able to find ways to use a computer? Are they able to find ways to move around the classroom to access materials? All of that might impact their academic skills and academic performance, and they might need specially designed instruction to be able to show what they know. And um, again, that instruction might be part of their learning, where some students are needing help in understanding what they are reading. If your child needs specific instruction along with their reading on how to access a book, that is still specially designed instruction. One caution that I would make with this particular category for just the general public is to be very careful that when you see somebody who does have an orthopedic impairment, that does not automatically mean that there is a cognitive need or an academic need there. Sometimes I've seen assumptions being made that they see somebody in a wheelchair, and um, assumptions are made about where they are cognitively functioning, maybe talking louder, using more of a talking down uh, posture or tone of voice, or even in the words that you're saying. I would first assume that somebody that you see in a wheelchair or on crutches or using crutches or walking with a significant limp, I I would recommend first assuming that their cognitive functioning is at or above the average, just as you would with anybody else that you meet. It is possible, certainly, that physical needs can coincide with cognitive needs, but I think that that is more the exception than the rule. So again, I would recommend first assuming that that cognitive ability is right where it needs, or right where it would be expected for anyone else. If you have any other thoughts about this, or if you have had any experience or recommendations that you would give for orthopedic impairment, I invite you to leave that in the comments. If you have any questions about this or any other topic, please feel free to leave that in the comments. And if you have recommendations for future topics or people that you would like to see interviewed on this channel, please feel free to add that to the comments as well. If this information has been helpful to you, I invite you to like, share, subscribe. That helps make this content more accessible to others that might need it. Thank you so much.